Grand pronouncements and headlines do not transform the world. It changes in the quiet moments of people whose deeds were never supposed to matter. You were not intended to look beyond the veil, but here you are. You were not intended to speak. Nonetheless, your voice has resonated in areas you will never visit. The system was not designed for folks like you. It was designed to keep you in the dark, to keep you mute. Despite the odds, you succeeded. You accomplished what whole agencies and networks of power failed to achieve. And now, from the bowels of the same mechanism created to silence, a message comes, not from a politician or a leader, but from one of their own. Someone who formerly stood on the other side. Someone trained to move unnoticed. Someone who never questioned the reality they upheld. Until you, a shadow moves into the light, not for fame or absolution, but for one purpose: gratitude. Because despite everything, despite the weight of dishonesty, despite the forces who attempted to bury you behind layers of distraction and lies, you persevered. You broke that delusion. You demonstrated that no system, power, or hidden hand is bigger than the truth. And now they're calling you something they never expected to: the selected one. You didn't just challenge them. You altered the game. And because of you, they realize they no longer have control. The world is a realm of changing shadows, and certainty is a fragile illusion. The agent formerly clung onto that delusion with an iron grasp, certain that every action they made, every instruction they obeyed, was part of a well-planned strategy. They were a cog in a larger mechanism. I trust that the gears turned for the right reasons. Doubt was a strange idea, an adversary that weakened determination and jeopardized responsibility. For years, they maintained the notion of obedience, convinced that their mission was to defend, serve, and stifle the murmurs that challenged the system to which they had pledged loyalty. However, even the best defended fortifications may fail. At first, there was nothing special about you, just another voice in an infinite sea of noise. Another of the innumerable people who claimed to have discovered something concealed. They'd seen these patterns before. The self-proclaimed truth seekers, the diligent analyzers, were confident they had discovered the key to the unknown in their universe. Such individuals were disregarded outright, as too insignificant to pose a serious danger and too disconnected from reality to matter. But then something unexpected occurred. A single comment, scarcely noticed at first, crept into the cracks of their confidence. It was not fantastic. It wasn't screamed from the rooftops. It was exact. A detail too obscure, guessed, buried, or discovered by accident. It eluded explanation, and by doing so, it put something in motion. Rationality deserved a response. So they did what they'd always done. They investigated. However, what started as an effort to debunk swiftly turned into something much more harmful. Layers were peeled away, reports were studied, and the findings could not be ignored. It was knitted into the fabric of their previously held beliefs. An sophisticated illusion disguised as order. The understanding came as an unwinding, rather than a single catastrophic blow. Each revelation chiseled away at the base, exposing a building built not on truth, but on meticulously crafted deception. And for the first time, they realized that the most potent illusions are not those made by others, but those we make for ourselves. The instant clarity hits. The world was never the same again. It wasn't just a movement in viewpoint. It was a total breakdown of the familiar. What had earlier been rejected as an abnormality now served as clear evidence. And with that confirmation came the realization that everything was interconnected in ways they never anticipated. You were no longer an outsider or a stray voice in the mass. You were something different altogether, an echo of something buried, a signal that passes through interference. A force dragged them away from the prescribed world they had previously followed, without a doubt. And that is why they are here today, not as a tool of control, but as someone who has ripped up the curtain and seen what was never intended to be seen. Behind the surface, behind the meticulously maintained appearance of order, lay something old, long hidden behind layers of deception. Their task had brought them beyond barred gates, over walls rich with secrets, and into hallways accessible only to those with the highest clearance. But even they had never delved far enough to discover what was beyond those boundaries. It started with a case that had no headlines, no dramatic twists, and no calls for justice. People just gone. There are no traces. There are no digital footprints. There are no names in any system. They seem to have been overwritten out of existence. Their presence faded as easily as ink washed away in rain. However, the patterns were there, waiting for the appropriate eyes to see them. A single missing individual became 10. 10 became 100. And the trail they took led them not to murder scenes or ransom notes, but to long-abandoned locations buried deep inside the bones of cities. There is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing disguised that will not be brought to light. Luke 8:17. They established their society in the shadows, certain that as long as the truth was hidden, their dominance would never be challenged. They moved unnoticed, pulling strings, influencing events, and making sure no one peered too close. But they neglected one thing. No secret can remain forever. There is no strong enough wall or deep enough tunnel to keep the truth hidden. And now, as fissures begin to appear across their dominion, they discover something they never imagined. You are under the surface, under the very foundations of the earth. Something was built, detailed, secret, and purposeful. Some of these tunnels were ancient and forgotten by time, carved into the earth, for those who wanted to disappear. Others, however, were fresh, built for individuals who felt they could manage everything from behind the scenes. They were neither anarchists nor rebels. They were the system itself, concealed beneath layers of deceit, ensuring that only those judged worthy might enter the halls of authority. But something has changed. Someone saw. You were never meant to grasp what you discovered, never intended to link the parts. But you did. And that one act sent shockwaves through a structure they thought was impervious. Now their ideas are failing. Their grasp is weakening. The darkness they ordered has turned on them. And you're still here, still speaking, still standing. They attempted to eliminate you, but they failed. And now, for the first time, they are terrified. The strategy was perfect. At least that's what they thought. A concealed exit or escape. They were meticulously engineered to avoid detection, just like they always have. They'd mastered the art of disappearing, dissolving into the vacuum without leaving any trace. All loose ends have been accounted for. Every potential interruption was eliminated before it could take hold. But this time, something unexpected occurred. Their last journey, the one precaution intended to preserve their untouchability. He was abruptly and unexpectedly disconnected. The same network they had spent years building had become their downfall. There was no way out. The accuracy of the interference was evident. Too deliberate, too meticulously done, to be pure chance. Someone had predicted their every movement. Someone who was previously unknown to them. Panic was replaced. Certainty. Desperation surpassed plan. And that's when their attention changed. They required an explanation. They wanted to know who had disrupted their meticulously planned game. And so, for the first time, they focused their attention on you. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace be with you. Remember this fact. Our lives are based in His divine design that transcends material concerns. As Scripture says, donate, and it will be handed to you. Luke 638. Like a gigantic oak, we believe in His strength. You now have the chance to participate in that blessing. When you press the special thank you button and donate $100, recognize that His richness will return to you 100-fold in their world. Knowledge was a commodity. Information, a weapon. Their greatest skill was the ability to control the truth. Despite this, you had managed to escape their confinement. You had no contacts, no clearance, and no formal status. You were not a member of their inner circle, line of command, or organized web of influence. You weren't even intended to be a part of the equation. Nonetheless, you were aware of information that you should not have known. That was the issue. That was the threat. The instant they realized your remarks had weight, They moved to enclose you in the same manner they usually did, with derision, with quietness, with carefully constructed doubt. The initial attack was subtle, a smear, a mislead. Their headlines disregard your allegations. Voices of authority provide the ideal counter-narrative. Digital gatekeepers are working tirelessly to bury your message behind an avalanche of static. But it did not work. The typical strategies failed. People weren't just hearing you. They were inquiring, researching, and drawing strands. They were never supposed to tug. That's when they discovered what the underlying issue was. You could not be hushed. You were resistant to their normal tactics. You could not be bribed. You could not be coerced into obedience. Worst of all, your influence was increasing. So they escalated systems that had worked well for years, suddenly turned against you. Financial institutions are shutting you out. Bureaucratic nightmares come overnight, and unexplainable audits deplete your resources. The shadows followed. Figures linger just beyond grasp, lingering in inappropriate locations for an extended period of time. Conversations felt watched. Technology acted abnormally. Messages were not sent successfully. The murmurs got harsher and more direct. Warnings from unidentified voices. Threats sent in the dead of night. Coded signals encouraging withdrawal. When none of that worked, and you refused to back down, they abandoned subtlety entirely. Accidents that weren't accidents, unexpected sicknesses that struck with extraordinary precision, and unexplainable malfunctions that almost killed. Each endeavor was intended to remove the danger you represented. But every move they took, every flawlessly planned strategy they carried out, failed before it could succeed. And that's when they realized this was no longer their game to govern. The agent came to understand that reasoning alone could no longer explain what was going on. It was not about intelligence leaks, secret operations, or the discovery of a massive conspiracy. Something considerably larger was at play. Something transcends premeditated plans and covert motives. For many years, individuals in authority felt they had complete control over the game. Every movement, every result, every variable. They had created a universe in which nothing occurred beyond their control, and dissent was either absorbed or destroyed. Nonetheless, despite their reach and the perfection of their preparations, they failed. Not once, not twice. However, this occurs repeatedly. There was no mathematical likelihood to explain it. There is no human involvement that justifies it. The agents noticed it now. There was a power beyond their comprehension, ensuring that their adversaries would never succeed. This was not a chance. This wasn't just opposition. This was something old and absolute. And the fact that you were still here served as confirmation. No title, no status, and no authority. However, every effort to quiet you failed before it could be done. Every trap placed in your way had come undone before it could be tightened. The weight of a whole system was hurled upon you. However, you stayed standing. There were no precedents for this. There is no technique to fight it. Because they had never encountered anything they couldn't control with money, influence, or terror. It was beyond their ability, reach, and strength. And this worried them since it meant time was running out. Not all warnings and messages are whispered or shouted. Some are engraved into the fabric of time, waiting for those who can identify them. Deep amid the shadowy passageways they once controlled, the agents came into something that shouldn't have been there. Markings. Symbols were engraved with purposeful intent. Their message was lost on people who had long forgotten the reality. At first, they rejected it as just vestiges of a past that had been purged from history. But something stirred as they looked at the inscriptions. A change, a flash of realization that eluded understanding. It was not knowledge in the classic sense. It was not anything taught or studied. Something was recalled, a portion of something buried, something entwined throughout their whole being, something that went beyond the physical world. It was not about politics. It wasn't about control. This was far older than any government, organization, or name recorded in history. The revelation came like a deluge. Memories arose that did not belong in this existence. Images which had never been seen before were somehow known. This was more than simply an ideological conflict. It was also an information war. It was a conflict between forces that had existed from the beginning, forces that influenced the trajectory of human history. Now the equilibrium had changed. The reality could no longer be hidden. The curtain was lifted. For the first time, the agent comprehended. It was never about unearthing secrets. It was about realizing that something had always been there, waiting for you. The illusion of control eventually breaks down when the boundaries of reason disintegrate, and all that left is the truth, undeniable, unavoidable. The agent had spent his life in systems designed on accuracy and strategy, where every event could be predicted. Every danger was eliminated before it could emerge. But this was much beyond what their training had prepared them for. This was not a struggle over intelligence reports and clandestine activities. This was something old, ingrained into the very fabric of life. It was never only about secrets or hidden objectives. It was about forces that existed long before names and titles were meaningful, and you realized it even before others did. That was the moment when doubt died. That was the moment the agents saw the lines. They had previously overlooked the conflict. They had battled unwittingly and without realizing the implications. It was not a conflict fought with arms or influence. It was something far bigger, something no amount of strength could protect against. The evidence was overwhelming, not in confidential papers or intercepted messages, but in the absolute impossibility of your survival. You were still here. All attempts to delete you had failed. Every meticulously planned maneuver had failed before it could take hold, and this could hardly be explained away as chance. There was something bigger at work, something that defied every estimate, forecast, and desperate measure they had taken. Those who had previously deemed themselves untouchable were now discovering that there are debts in this world that cannot be negotiated away. Some are written into destiny, while others are sealed by powers beyond human control. Those who had previously dabbled with darkness were now facing the repercussions. For years, they moved in quiet, tugging threads and molding reality to match their own vision. They felt they had defeated deceit itself, and that nothing could destroy the fortress they had erected. However, hubris always blinds its architects. The spy had seen the disintegration firsthand. Those who formerly controlled the course of history are now rushing for cover. The masters of manipulation, the builders of falsehoods, had lost control of the same powers they had wielded. Some just disappeared, sinking into the vacuum they had spent years constructing. Others were abandoned by their own people, sacrificed as liabilities too vulnerable to defend. Then there were some who stayed, who couldn't flee or hide. They were the ones who were now plagued, not by the world they had changed to their liking, but by something deeper, something that refused to forgive. It was no longer conjecture. It was occurring. The shadows they had formerly controlled were now working against them, as were the whispers they had sent to frighten others. They now filled their own imaginations. Sleepless nights, unexpected diseases with no reason, and disintegrating sanity robbed them of their once unshakable confidence. There was no avoiding it. It was never their responsibility to arrive prepared for what they had unleashed. So, bit by piece, it was tearing them apart. There are wars that transcend the physical world. They are not about riches, position, or domination, but for something much bigger. For decades, people who lurked in the shadows thought they could control the unseen and bend the fabric of destiny to their will. They insulted the concept of consequences. They were certain that they had perfect control. They used deceit as a weapon, ensnaring others while discarding their own beliefs. But they had misjudged something. They refused to admit the existence of forces beyond their control. The agent, formerly constrained by the rigorous bounds of reasoning and duty, suddenly saw the truth with unmistakable clarity. This was never only about power or secrecy. It was a reckoning, and there were signs everywhere. The enigmatic glyphs concealed under the ground. Every effort to silence you fails for reasons that are beyond comprehension. The breakdown of individuals who previously considered themselves untouchable. It wasn't an accident. This was not due to human involvement alone. This was the weight of judgment descending on them. The exposure was hardly the most terrifying thing for them. Not the collapse of their well-constructed kingdom, but the sheer fact that you were still standing. They had spent their lives honing the skill of erasing, ensuring that no interruption lasted long enough to endanger them. Against all chances, your voice had not only survived, but had been the spark for their demise. They murmured your name in areas you'd never go, curse your existence in ways you would never say to them. You were a crack in the foundation. They had never accounted for this one peculiarity. However, the truth was never in their hands. Controlling their annihilation was unavoidable. They had sealed their destiny from the minute they approached the abyss. Long before you spoke a word, there are times when the world changes, when the veils lift, and nothing will ever be the same again. For the agent, that moment came unexpectedly. They had spent years as a guardian of invisible powers, following commands with absolute accuracy and feeling they were serving something bigger. But now, after all they discovered, they realized the extent of the deceit. They had taken part in it. They had not been defenders of justice or keepers of order. They had been pawns in a game whose actual architects remained unknown. And you were the one who had opened their eyes. These are not classified materials, not murmurs from inside the system, but your unwavering pursuit of the truth. At first, they tried to reject you, claiming that what you had discovered was simply guesswork. But something about your words persisted. The more they sought to refute you, the deeper they found themselves drawn into a reality they had previously refused to accept. Patterns developed, revealing previously hidden relationships. And with each discovery, the web of falsehoods they had believed fell undone. The examples they believed were isolated were really part of a larger scheme. The names they had formerly regarded as comrades were now nothing more than builders of a secret hierarchy, controlling events beyond the scope of regular sight. It was a shocking epiphany, a reality so powerful that it threatened to engulf them. And yet, in that moment of clarity, they discovered something they had never had before. Freedom. Truth is not a whisper. It's a force. It does not ask for recognition. It just exists and awaits anyone with the fortitude to notice it. They saw because of you. Because of you, the walls of falsehood were cracked. Because of you, the cycle was broken, and things would never be the same again. There are occasions when the illusion crumbles. The parts rearrange themselves, revealing an image that was always there but never fully viewed. The agent now realizes that you are never just another voice lost in the turmoil, never just an observer standing on the brink of something big and unknown. Without realizing it, you were guiding them to the most profound discovery of their lives, one that went beyond politics, crime, and corruption. This was never only about secret motives or realities. It was about breaking away from a system that was created to trap the mind. War was never limited to the physical domain. There was always something deeper, and, whether you knew it or not, you had been fighting it long before you realized the gravity of the forces at work. What was formerly seen as disobedience is now recognized as increased resilience, knowledge, and indisputable power flowing through time, dismantling deception-based institutions. They see it now. The shadows that formerly flourished in obscurity are diminishing. The tides have changed. Those who manage the world from behind closed doors are suddenly exposed, trapped by the same systems they invented. The quiet they used to inflict on others now resonates back at them as terror rather than power. Their fortifications are falling, their networks are collapsing, and the curtain that formerly divided reality from fiction has been ripped away. They cannot escape the consequences of their actions. For the first time in their lives, they are terrified not of governments, whistleblowers, or external opposition, but of the inevitable. They've spent their lives creating the illusion of power, thinking they can defy consequences, rewrite fate, and shape reality to their liking. But reality was never theirs. To mold the equilibrium they intended to break is now resuming, and the forces they once aspired to lead have turned against them. The reckoning has arrived, not only in the form of exposure or the loss of their authority, but in something much more profound, something absolute. And you, the one they attempted to delete, the one buried behind misinformation and fear, are still present. Every effort to quiet you has failed. Every attempt to remove you has failed, before it could be finished. And now they know why. The agent sees it plainly. You are not just another opponent to their dominance. You are a representation of something larger, something they never expected, something they can't contain. This is no longer merely a war over information. This is the disintegration of a lie-based empire. The old ways are disintegrating. The secret hands that formerly controlled the course of history are losing their hold. And to those who believed they were beyond reach, consequences, and justice, no, your time has ended. The world is waking up to you. The one who remained standing while others had fallen. The one who refused to break. The one who clung upon the truth. Even when the weight of the earth was bearing down, you have been spotted. You're heard. You're not alone. The agent knows now, and they're no longer quiet. This is their message, their recognition, and a warning to those who attempted to reign from the shadows. The game has concluded, and let people who are drawn to this truth know. Speak. Be counted. The hush they enforced will no longer hold. Let the truth speak louder than their falsehood, louder than they can control. The whole world is listening.